Hey everyone, my name is Ed. Welcome to Adventurous. Uh, what I want to talk about today is something that's really it's been on my mind for a little while, and something that I think is really important and just doesn't seem to be talked about all that much. What I'm going to be referring to specifically are I guess I've heard called somewhere else, and I'm just going to run with it, called the demon function. So, um, the lowest function in your cognitive stack. So you have, look up the 8 cognitive functions online if you want to learn more. But basically, you got your 4 functions in your ego, and then you got your 4 functions below that in your subconscious or unconscious. So that very bottom function there is the one I want to talk about. And specifically, I'm going to talk about the those functions as regarding for the NF types. So I'm going to be talking primarily about INFJ, ENFP. I'm also going to be referring to ENFJ and INFP. I'm going to talk about those slightly because I think, depending on your feedback, it might be worth its own video because I think there's a lot to talk about there. But for right now, I'm going to focus on. I'm going to talk about 4 of them because I think that as you start to get that pattern, you can see how it might relate to other types. Because I don't know how confident I feel about going into the other types because I don't know them quite as well, and I don't want to do type splaining where I badly go into a function that might really trigger people. I think that'd be terrible. So it's more like this being an NI thing of me, since I'm an INFJ, kind of showing the pattern. So like as I'm going through all these types, you can maybe see, if you're not one of the types, how this might apply to you, and how you might use it to have greater healing and heal a function that for every person, that lower function, that demon function, can kind of get abused or not accessed right by others, and that can kind of cause weird issues and resistances to certain things. So yeah, let me kind of start getting into it. With the INFJ, their lowest function is SI. So that's the demon function. So SE would be on their ego stack, and then lower below that would be SI. So basically, how that would work is, everything that the INFJ kind of does, like, they're trying to do it for a good reason. They're trying to be nice and positive and consider people's emotions, all that kind of stuff. And yet, regardless of all of that, people break into their bubble. They give them a bad SI experience, and that can cause them to be really. It could cause being defensive. Well, it really can cause people to be perfectionistic, kind of. I think that might be a little bit where that comes from, because it's like, oh, I really want to protect this soft area, and so if I do everything perfect, everything awesome, everything however, then people won't give me a bad experience. People won't treat me bad. If I'm nice, if I'm considering people's emotions and possibly invalidating your own, that people won't treat me bad, that people won't give me that bad SI experience. And it can even cause weird resistances to doing things, where, let's say, like in a job or a school or whatever, you get assigned some task that you really don't want to do. You need to do it, but you don't want to do it. You feel that imposition upon you in that SI way, and you kind of want to rebel. You kind of want to just not do it. And so a lot of the anecdotes that people would want to say is like, oh, just do this or that or whatever, to try to kind of get over it, to kind of do what you need to do, doesn't always work, because it doesn't answer that SI problem. It doesn't answer that something's being imposed upon me, and not wanting to give into that, getting kind of enraged about that. So for the INFJ, one thing that you might be able to do is, say if it's a task-like thing, you can say, okay, I do not want to do this. I acknowledge the SI. It's like, this thing is being forced on me. I don't want to go there. But trying to get yourself in agreement that the larger outcome, the larger goal is something that you want. You can kind of latch onto your NI and say, hey, NI, help me out. I don't want to do this one particular assignment, but I do want to pass the course so I get the degree, so that way I get to whatever future goal that you're trying to do with that. And in that way, you can kind of come to agreement, so that way it doesn't feel like as much of an imposition, and it's easier to get the task done. Then SE will say, oh, okay, cool. Then it's just charging SE up and trying to get it to do its thing. There's probably a lot more examples there about SI and SI being imposed upon. It's probably worth a larger discussion. The interesting thing, so let's talk about the ENFP with SE Demon, because it's very, very similar to me, it seems like. Always welcome for feedback to offer additional clarification. But with SE Demon, they're basically they're asked to do something, to act in some way, to do something that doesn't align with their goals, which doesn't align with their NE as to an interesting possibility. So it's not an interesting possibility. It's not something that speaks to their values, and yet they're being very forced into do this, act out, do whatever. And that does not help them at all. That really triggers them in not a good way. And it would be a very similar thing where it's like, okay, if it's something that you do that does need to get done, and not something where you tell someone to shove off, if it's something that's a little more critical, try to see, is there a way that in the longer view it would fit into your values? Like, it's a stepping stone that might get you closer to your values. Is it something that might ultimately lead to a good positive possibility? Yeah, it's like, I don't know if this video is as much as giving you like easy answers and shortcuts, as much as understanding where the resistances lie, understanding why you feel that tug inside of you, why you feel that churning in your stomach, why you feel that the strangling in your throat. You feel like your body's fighting against you, or that one part of your mind's fighting against the other part of your mind. Is about resistance. It's like, oh, okay, that's what's happening. That's where I'm at. And identifying at least roughly where it is kind of the start to healing. I think also, in a very interesting way, it can speak to why certain personality pairings work really well. So with, say, INFJ, ENFP, in their ego stack, they'll both have that other function that, the other side is dealing with, is their demon function. So my SI demon, they're going to have SI inferior for the ENFP, and vice versa. In a strange way, that can, or maybe not strange, maybe it's an awesome way, can actually provide healing, because see, there's actually a positive thing for the inferior function, because they when that function tries, it can try really awesome. Like the inferior function gets a bad rap, in my opinion. It gets a really bad rap because like the inferior function's awesome. Um, like when it tries, it can, if it stores up its energy and it's like, it takes a while before it to, launches, but when it launches, like it can shoot really freaking far. It can be like almost right up there with like the, almost as if they were that dominant function, at least for a small period of time. So like my SE can really charge up. There's like I can almost be, you know, like a top SE function, at least for a little bit, and then I ran out of energy. And he's like, "Oh God, I'm not doing that again. I need to recharge." But it strives and it can do really awesome things, but it's also sensitive, and it's sensitive enough that when it comes into contact with, say, someone that has that as their demon function, like they're not going to be aggressive about it. They're going to be really cautious about it and kind to the other person who's experiencing that trauma or that resistance. So like an ENFP could teach me that not everyone that gets into my bubble is going to try to give me a bad experience, is not going to try to make my life a living hell, for instance. And that's liberating. That's powerful, and we need more of that. And same thing for INFJ, ENFP, that just because someone is trying to ask you to do something that is not like one of your any ideas or, is super in line with your FI thing, that you can actually have a positive experience with that too. That jumping out into some situation that doesn't lead into one of your dominant functions can actually be awesome and liberating in its own right. That you don't just see that demon in a negative light, that there's positivity too, and that's part of healing. That's part of becoming a that more rounded individual. And it's where a lot of traumas can lie, and releasing those is massive and healing, and something that should be cherished. Anywho, let me talk about quickly for the ENFJ and the INFP. So for the ENFJ, they're going to have TE in that demon slot, and that's actually really interesting. Like the ENFJ, if I didn't say that earlier, the ENFJ and INFP, the way their demon function with like their top functions, their ego functions, really fascinating. So essentially, ENFJ will get picked on for not having evidence about something, and usually that's being picked on because they're FE, because of them being aware of emotional reality, the emotions of others, that human beings don't exist in just the logical, physical, empirical realm, but there's stuff up here that it's basically another reality of sorts. I can sometimes call it like the trust engine, the reciprocity engine. It's basically in a world where exists more than one human. You kind of have to trust them first. Like you can't just rely on, people aren't mechanical. They have their own minds, they're their own sovereigns, they're their own people. And realizing that how people are, the impact of other human beings upon this human being. So let me personalize it, because trying to make this generic is getting complicated. So let me try making it slightly more personal. So if people have impacted me emotionally in a positive or a negative light, let's just say negative because people can visualize it easier. All right, so someone did something bad to me, and then I might react in a way that is not logical. I might react in a way towards somebody else who wasn't even a part of the thing, and that negative, and the logician, the people who say everything is logical, is like, well, that's also reality. It's like, of course that's going to happen. It's logical. And likewise, if you put a positive energy towards someone else, if you pick someone up on the side of the road who's stranded, and that positive energy may carry through where they'll treat someone else positively or whatever, it pays itself forward, for example. And how that energy can flow throughout other human beings, that there's essentially its own logic. Is just as logical in my mind as TI or TE. It's like, of course this stuff happens this way. It makes sense. But ENFJs will get picked on because they see this reality that's just as clear, or sometimes even more clear to them than the other. Not as much as more clear to them as it seems like people who are attacking them in that spot about TE or TI are blind. They're like, how can you not see this or whatever? So it creates a very negative type of thing where they might say, oh, if this is what logic is, then maybe I should just ignore it. It's like, that might be more INFP, but for ENFJ, it's the person who's using the T against them will not realize how cause and effect work. So in an emotional example, so with human beings, let's just use say the master-slave relationship, because I think this is an easy way to understand everything. So if master, one that's in authority or whatever, treats the slave, the other person, negatively, resentment can build. But that person still has power, authority in the eyes of society, blah, blah, blah. Initially, it can seem as if that authority figure who treats people negatively gets results, because fear is probably the most powerful motivator of human beings on the planet. So imposing fear upon someone else, imposing someone else's will against someone else, at first can seem like it has more powerful results than if you were to treat them right. Which is messed up, but I'm getting to another point here in a second, which will clear it up. As now, that resentment there, it exists, but is not being acted upon. TE would like to see a more immediate cause-effect result, but they don't see it. Eventually, as more negative gets piled upon, resentment builds. It is still not being overtly expressed towards the person that's doing them wrong. It may result in subtle effects, little quips, little facial expressions, whatever, that FE people can say, oh, okay, they are not taking this well. Or, this is not okay. but there's yet no TE evidence, depending on how blind the TE person is. There's not yet that level of evidence that they can say that, oh, what I'm doing is not effective, because I'm still getting results by treating them badly. Eventually, that builds to such a point where basically it snaps. And that breaking point is, no matter how much worse they treat me, I no longer care about the consequences. I am going to make sure that I'm treated right. And they'll lash out and do whatever. And then TEs say, huh, what happened? That all just came out of nowhere. Like, what's the deal? And so a little bit cartoonish example of a certain TE not really understanding what FE is all about. And so, like, there is TE evidence, you could say, in that example, that yes, treating someone negatively, ignoring them as a human being, as their own sovereign, will cause negative consequence. And therefore, this, feeling reality, FI reality, does indeed exist. But it's hard to measure from a TE perspective. It does exist, and you probably could measure it in some cases. So, like, say, for example, if you found a bunch of people that were experiencing a certain kind of trauma, for instance, and you knew they were experiencing that trauma, and you, like, observed all their reactions and things like that, you could say, like, during this particular stage, they're acting this way. When they're, process some of their emotions a little more fully, they might act differently, et cetera, et cetera. It's like you could maybe model in such a way that TE would be more apt to realize how certain things connect together, that there is indeed evidence to suppose what us FEI5 people kind of know already, kind of knew all along. So I don't know if this was the most apt and the most clear, but hopefully that kind of talks a little bit about the TE side and how how someone like an ENFJ could get kind of resistant to people trying to push TE in their face, when a lot of times when that happens, they're trying to invalidate something really important that they really already see. That can be hurtful, and realizing that it's important to come to peace with that they're just not connecting the dots, that they're a little bit on the blind side, and that there is a lot of really powerful utility to TE, to evidence. That you don't have to ignore all evidence just because a lot of the people that are using this thing against you are trying to ignore your reality or trying to beat you up on your reality. I'm hoping somehow that might help on your own healing journey. I'm not sure exactly how. That's why I was kind of a little nervous about going into this particular part, because I don't know if I have all the answers. And as Enneagram 5, I do want to have all the answers. So I feel very uncomfortable when I don't have any. But I know something's there. I know there can be healing there. Especially when you talk about INFP, because they're going to have a very similar experience and they're going to feel in very similar ways. And so for INFP, basically their function down there, their demon function is going to be TI. So basically every time that they have a strong FI opinion, or not every time, but sometime in their life, probably multiple times in their life, They have a strong FI opinion, and someone with TI is going to tell them this particular thing is illogical, that this does not flow, and that's really going to tick them off, the INFP. Because it's basically going to invalidate something that they feel shouldn't be invalidated, something that is extremely true to them, that is very moral. So basically, they can interpret it in such a way is that logic is telling me to be immoral, and I hate that. So that would be TI demon. And why they may be nonplussed about TI. Now, certain people, or it can be said that not all the people that are kind of using TI arguments are necessarily trying to say, do something immoral, as much as this particular approach may not flow. You're on the right track. Can you try another one? Please, please. I find myself in that position sometimes. Please don't hurt me. But that some of the people that are TI dominant might be extremely unaware of realizing that there's not just this mechanical reality, that beyond the mechanics of something, that there are actual human beings, and that morality is, and valuing people, and valuing the uniqueness of people, that we're not all just the same, we're not interchangeable parts, is something true in its own right. That yeah, I think that ENFJ and INFP can relate on that, because they're both attacked in similar ways. Hopefully that doesn't cause them to be blind to just say, we're going to ignore TI and TE altogether. Like, hopefully they're well developed enough not to do that, but that in their respective TI, TE inferiors, that they can kind of see the point of the other person and not be invalidated, so they can basically see the utility and the positive values that can come from those functions. And hopefully somehow, either through their own experiences or through linking up with other people, or however, finding a way both for them to heal themselves and also to help other people, to basically come to explanations that it is indeed logical to. So let me try to build a logical case for feeling, for FIFE. I guess primarily FE, because that's the one I can think most easily about, because it's in my responsible slot. It's in my second slot in the ego stack. So I feel it's very responsible to be aware of FE, of the FE, of the emotional, the feelings that are coming off, that are radiating off of other people. That's important to respect and honor that. So when I see people not respecting that, then I'll get a little uppity about that. So for let me pause for a second, because I need to wake up my brain. Be right back. Oops. I'm still on camera. Let me go this way. So, the logical case that I would build would be treating people in a positive manner. What's the value of that? What's the logical reason to do something like that? Beyond, it's the right thing to do, or, those kind of reasons. And the reason is, in the long run, treating people in a positive way ends up building respect and loyalty in the people that you're dealing with. That in the long run, people trust you. And when they trust you, they're willing to go, well, they're willing to go above and beyond if they need to. They're willing to help out if they need to. But more important than that, you're not building the resentment that's going to want to cause them to sabotage you. Which, honestly, that might even be more of an important reason. That in the long run, this resentment, this things that cause people to, to snap in whatever environment, will cause a negative long-term repercussion. Doing something that causes a negative long-term repercussion is illogical. It's stupid. Hope I didn't offend anyone, even if it is stupid. So, for the TI, people who are questioning what's the logic of feeling or whatever, it's like, well, in the long run, this is, people that acting illogical, that acting against the employer, against whatever, is actually extremely illogical when you're attacking, when you're invalidating, when you're hurting the people that you're expecting to work for you, or that you're expecting to work with in a non-job environment, however. And in the long run, it just doesn't make any sense. That in the short run, it appears that treating people mean is a great motivator. That, wow, if you look at our metrics, we're off the charts. It's like the people who treat people nice, it's like their output's kind of meh. But with us, when we're beating our people with a stick, holy cow, did you look at the metrics? But in the long run, the company that had the amazing metrics at the beginning doesn't exist anymore. And the employer that was doing something mean got beat up, or in the case of the French Revolution, they kind of lost their noggin over being mean to people. It's like, in the long run, that doesn't actually work. Who knew? So that's kind of the case that I would build, is like, okay, well, in the short run, it looks like one way works. In the long run, it actually is logical to treat people with respect. It's that there is a logic to it. Yeah, part of me wants to talk about all the positive, touchy-feely kind of things about it, and I wish people would be cool enough with just that. But if not, then I think there's a logical case there. And yes, I probably could have made a much tighter case. I'm kind of doing this off the top of my head. There'd be a lot more examples, et cetera, et cetera. Someone wants to help out, really appreciate it. Because I think it's needed both for healing the people who have been attacked in this way, but also for making a better world, to be honest. Having a more kind, humane world, which is something which I deeply care about and want to see in this world. So, anywho, hope this makes sense. And this is my, I can't remember if I said this at the beginning. I don't think I did, but this is my first video in forever. So I'll try to get better if this wasn't for you. But please stick around. I hope there's more, or there definitely will be more thoughtful content on the way. I have this NI series I want to do, which is kind of just like showing my own thought processes about various things. Because I hear a lot of weird things about NI that don't make sense. And so it's like, instead of just telling you about NI, let me show you NI. Let me show you examples of my own thought process, how it got all these different places, and maybe a little discussion at the end about, okay, this is what NI is, this is maybe what these other functions are, and just trying to make things more clear. Yeah, more cool content on the way. Please subscribe. If any of you are underwater scribes, then you're already a subscribe. Thank you. Convince your other folks to subscribe as well. Like it, so that way more people know that I exist, which will definitely help me, because I'm an INFJ. I'm always worried people don't know I exist. So help out. Thanks. Bye. I can figure out how to stop this thing. Help.